Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari. In this episode, we're going to talk about more Persian kings. In our last episode, we talked about Cyrus and how Cyrus was awesome. Cyrus is so awesome, the Hebrews call him a Messiah. The Lydians and the Babylonians get conquered by him and are happy. Hey, have you been conquered by Cyrus yet? No. Was it awesome? Oh, he was wonderful. He's so gentle. He's just... I got to tell you, if you're ever going to be conquered by somebody, you have to be conquered by Cyrus. Well, Cyrus dies, and his son Cambyses takes over. And if you're watching the video, you will notice that Cambyses does not get the same reputation as his dad. So, why? His father changes the rules. The Assyrians murdered everybody, and so everyone was used to everybody murdering everybody. Nebuchadnezzar murdering, destroying the people in Judea, smashing Jerusalem, smashing the temple, murdering lots of people. That was considered, well, the Assyrians made this normal. This is how we're going to this is how we're going to do things. Cyrus comes along and says, no, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be good to people. Now, Cyrus sets the stage for Persian kings. If Cyrus was nice, Persian kings should be nice, right? That's pretty much how it should be, right? That's what people who got conquered expect. They're like, well, Cyrus was nice. And they're able to point to Cyrus. They're like, Cyrus was a great guy, and he was nice, so you shouldn't murder us. Well, his son Cambyses wants to be like dad, as many sons want to be like dad. He looks at dad, and that's a problem because his dad was awesome. And I mean origin story Superman awesome. And so he wants to be like dad. But dad conquered most of the Asiatic world. He conquered most of the known world at the time. Except for the richest place in the world, Egypt. And so Cambyses gets his army. Says, we're going to get rich, guys. And people are like, yeah, that's cool. And invades Egypt. Let's go. We're going to invade Egypt. And they cross the desert, taking a Phoenician navy with them, invade Egypt. It's the last place left, and he conquers it. And Cambyses turns out to be really, really, really mean to the Egyptians. He basically has a nervous breakdown in Egypt. Why? Why isn't he nice? And there's a couple of different stories. One of which is the Lost Army of Cambyses. Maybe 50,000 troops, maybe 5,000 troops. Nobody knows. That goes out to conquer an oracle in the desert, in the Libyan desert, out there in the western desert. Alexander will do the same thing, by the way. So this is not crazy talk. Alexander does the same thing. And the same thing almost happens to Alexander. They get caught in a giant sandstorm off of the Sahara, where the Sahara and the Libyan desert, which at this point are separate deserts. They've since been combined, but at this point they were separate deserts. A giant sandstorm comes through and buries that army. It might be 50,000 troops. It could be 5,000. We really don't know. And that is the Lost Army of Cambyses. Yeah, he loses an entire army. They get swallowed up. They're never seen again. Expeditions have gone to go and find the Lost Army of Cambyses, because they would be wearing armor and they'd be having shields and spears and there'd be stuff. There'd be all these. If 50,000 men got lost in the desert, there would be skeletons, and they're gone. This is the ancient world's equivalent of Roanoke. There's just a mystery. They're gone. They walked off into the desert, kissed their babies goodbye, said, bye, Mom, I'll see you in a few weeks when we come back from our great adventure, and gone. There are stories of the people who were supposed to be in the army that had to, they hurt their foot and they couldn't go. And they're like, oh man, I so wanted to go, but I have to stay behind. At the last minute, man, I changed tickets. And there's the people who changed tickets the other way, who weren't supposed to be in the army and are like, dude, let me go with you. It'll be awesome. We'll go get our oracles taken by the oracle. It'll be fun. And they joined up and they walked off in the desert and disappeared. The other story that comes down is that Cambyses was freaked out by Egyptian gods. So you have to know about Egyptian gods. Egyptian gods are people, all men. They are humans. But they wear the masks of animals. And there's a story that goes back that Egypt has a god killer, just like Greece does. And the Greeks actually tell this story. That Egypt had a god killer, a titan, kind of, who ate the other gods. And so what the Egyptian gods did was flee. They fled to Greece. This is what the Greeks would, of course, say. And they covered themselves with masks as animals so you wouldn't notice them. Now, that's the story. The reality is a little less colorful. And the reality is people were illiterate. People are illiterate. And so the imagery of a god has to tell you what that god does, what that is the god of, real fast. And so in Greece, they do the same thing in Greece. The wings, the eagle wings on the feet of Mercury, Apollo, is like, oh, he is fast. He's the messenger god. Zeus holding a thunderbolt, god of thunder, god of the sky. Like, there's always cues for the illiterate because 90% of people are illiterate. And so the Egyptians, when they drew their gods, drew them because they're Egyptian in Africa with the aspects of animals. Why? Because animals are super people. Like, people are cool, but animals are way better. So if you want to show that your god is fast, you give him cheetah legs in Africa. And everybody goes, oh, that god is fast. The god of the river, crocodile head. Why? Why would you give him a crocodile head? Because when you go down to the Nile, it's full of crocodiles. And so animals are faster, they're stronger, they're tougher than humans. They're wiser. So, like, the wise gods have the bird's head with the giant eyes because they see everything. And so Cambyses looks at this and goes, oh my God, you're worshiping animals. And the Egyptians are like, no, man, it's cool. It's just a metaphor. They stand in for the superpowers of the gods. The gods are all human. It's just a mask. It's totally cool, man. It's totally cool. Here. Sit down, relax, have a smoke. It'll be fine. And Cambyses is like, no, you're the oldest, richest people in the whole wide world. I don't understand this. You have animal gods. And like, no, man, it's just a metaphor. It's an illusionary literary device for illiterate people. It's okay. It's just an artistic mnemonic device so people will remember. And like, no, oh my God. And you have a bull that you worship as a god. They're like, no, he's a symbol of the gods of the plenty. You know, if you read your Old Testament, you'd have the story of Joseph. We had the fatted calves, and that's the story. And if you remember your Moses, you know that they made a golden calf. Well, this is the calf, man. It's just a sign of how awesome the Nile is in providing the greatest food in the world, man. And Cambyses is like, oh my God, you're worshiping cows. How could this be? You're worshiping cows. And he goes and he kills the cow. He kills the god bull Apis, A-P-I-S. And he has the story goes, a barbecue for his soldiers. And the soldiers are sitting there going, this is great. I've never eaten a god before. This is cool. And the Egyptians are like, no, it was just a symbol. And the Egyptians are pissed because when you kill the symbol of a god, people get mad. And so they revolt. They're like, you Persians are not the Persians of Cyrus, man. We expected you to be cool, and you're not cool. You're the opposite of cool. You're Assyrian. And so they revolted because that's what you do. And they revolt. And now the Persians, to keep Egypt, and you have to keep Egypt because Egypt is one, the wealthiest land in the world, and two, the biggest producer of food in the world. So if you want to have an awesome empire, you need to own Egypt. And so Cambyses brings in a bigger army and smashes it, and he smashes the Egyptian revolt, and he tortures people, cuts people's feet off, and throws them into the river, and all kinds of crazy stuff. He goes insane. The ancient sources say he goes insane. Egypt revolts. There's even a revolt back in Persia of the nobility. The nobility have been sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Now remember, Cyrus is away all the time. They're twiddling their thumbs, being like, this Cambyses guy, where is he? He's not doing it. He's just living in Egypt. He ain't coming back. I'm going to run the show. Look, I'll just run the show. And some other guy says, no, you're not going to run the show. I'm going to run the show. And some other guy says, no, dude, we're all homeboys. We can all run the show together. Just like in Reservoir Dogs. It'll be cool. And so Cambyses has to go back to Persia to go put down that revolt. He's got problems. The Egyptians hate him. As soon as he leaves Egypt, the Egyptians revolt again. He's going to have to leave a big army in Egypt and occupy the place, which is the total opposite of what Cyrus was doing. Cyrus would conquer a place and be like, yeah, I'm out. We're cool, right? And the king of Lydia would be like, dude, we cool. With his finger guns. And be totally cool. So Cambyses goes back to Persia and he dies. And there's a couple of different stories of how he dies. The new king, the guy who will become king, Darius, will say he killed Cambyses to prove he's the man. But no other sources think that's true. Most sources agree he died of some kind of infection. And the question is, did he kill himself in his craziness? Or did he have a self-inflicted wound, which happens all the time with swords and whatnot? You know, you're doing this stuff and you're fighting in battle and you get a nick and it became gangrenous. It became an infection and you died. There's no penicillin. And so he dies of this possibly self-inflicted wound. There are some stories of suicide, but most pretty much agree it was accidental. And Cambyses dies as a young man. But everybody agrees he kind of went insane. He is not his father's son. Now that leaves a problem in Persia because Cambyses doesn't have children. So he doesn't have a son. So there's no grandson of Cyrus to naturally walk up and go, hello, I am grandson. There's nobody. So who's going to be the next king? Well, remember those guys who revolted back in Persia, those homeboys? Well, they say, hey, we're going to take over. We could run it together, man. We're running it as a collective. Where we share information, and we each do our own thing, and we're like multiple kings. But we're like the same because we're all homeboys. And one of those 6 guys is a guy named Darius, or if you're from England, Darius. And Darius says, yeah, that's a wonderful plan. And starts to murder all the other guys. He sends female prostitute assassins against one. He sends male prostitute assassins against another. Right? You know? Everybody's got to do what they got to do. So, hey, everything's cool. Everything's cool in the ancient world. So he murders all the other guys. And then he's like, whoa, all the other guys are murdered. I guess I'm the only one left. I guess I'm Darius, 3rd king of Persia. Now, Darius, he's a distant, third cousin. I mean, he's related enough to Cyrus that he's able to be like in Spaceballs. Like, My father was your father's cousin's friend's former college roommate. That makes us like homeboys. Like, he's barely related to Cyrus. He's some distant third cousin or whatever it is. He kills his rivals. Now, he doesn't have the same problem. By not being Cyrus's son or grandson, he doesn't have to conquer the world. Now, he will conquer India. He will go off and conquer India, which turned out to be richer than, or as rich as Egypt. It turned out to be like massively rich. And because Egypt was always in revolt, India was actually more of a moneymaker because India was more stable. So he kills his rivals. And what he looks around is he's going to be Elizabeth I of England, the Tudor. Elizabeth, the Great. He's like, we need principles. Like, Cyrus spent his time conquering the world, which was cool. Cambyses spent his time conquering Egypt, which is less cool, which is important, but no one's been running this place. Like, we got kings in Lydia, we got kings in Babylon doing their own thing. Like, someone has to run this place as an empire. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people who thought Cyrus was cool. And so he's known as the Great Builder. And he's going to build, and he's going to build, and he's going to build the institutions that are going to last 200 years. And he's going to be known as Darius the Great, the Great Builder. So what does he build? The first thing he builds is Persepolis, a giant-ass city. Why? Well, remember, there's Babylon. And if you want to be an important person in the Middle East, you got to have a Babylon. You have to have a big city. Everybody says, yes, you could kick my butt, but do you have a city? Do you? Because if you don't, there's Babylon, which is more awesome than you are. And so he builds Persepolis, which is going to be a city to awe people. Not to scare them like Nineveh was. It's going to be big. It's going to be built on a grand scale. But it's also going to be built by hired workers, not slaves, like Nineveh was, like the Assyrians do. Instead, Darius hires the best and the brightest. Hey, woodworkers from Phoenicia. Now, why are the wood from Phoenicia is so important because it's the only major forest in the Middle East. It's so important that even today, on the Lebanese flag, the Lebanese cedar tree is on the flag. Wood is the symbol of Phoenicia. So if you're a Phoenician, you can do two things. You make ships and you make wood stuff. And so you want to get great wood furniture and whatnot, you get Phoenicians. Greeks, hey, you have that weird colored mosaic art stuff. Come, bring that. You're at the end of the world, but come and bring that. And he's going to hire the best and the brightest. The stonework from Babylon. The copper, bronze, iron work from the Lydians. He's going to hire the best and the brightest. And what this does, by putting 100,000 people together, maybe more, over several years, is connect the different peoples of the empire and tell the people they must be great. First, they're sitting there going, did you get paid by the Persians? Did you get paid by the Persians? I got paid by the Persians. It's awesome. The Persians aren't that bad. It could be worse. They could be the Assyrians or Nebuchadnezzar. We get paid. I got paid where I'm making like $25 an hour. Plus benefits. This is awesome. The second thing it does is connect these people. Because they're going to hang out and they're going to go, who are you? Oh, I'm a Greek. Where the hell is that? Oh, well, it's about 1,000 miles back that way. Who are you? Well, I'm an Indian. I'm from the Indus River. Well, where the hell is that? I never heard of that. I got a map, and it ain't on it. Well, it's 1,000 miles. Actually, it's about 2,000 miles that way. The opposite way from where you're from. And then they look at each other and go, oh, you mean the Persians own everything in between? Yep. Oh,
The Persians must be great. Look at all the people. Look at how much money they're spending. Look at all the different peoples from all over the world, from places that other people's maps don't have. The Persians must be great. Darius builds a highway system that connects Persepolis to the big cities. Susa, Ecbatana, which was another capital, which was the summer capital because it was higher up in the mountains and so it was cooler, like going to the Jersey Shore. Ecbatana is on the road from Afghanistan to India. And all of these led up to Sardis in Lydia. So they connected the eastern and the western half of this empire. From Persia and Media to Mesopotamia, all the way to Lydia. That was the Royal Road. And this was a revolution in communication. Now, the only people who could use this road were messengers. It was the internet of its day. It's the internet of the 1980s or the 1970s, when the only people on the internet were government officials and high-end university researchers doing government work. Unlike the Romans who built roads that everybody could use, these roads, Persian roads, were a communication system, were a mail system, so that the king in Persepolis or Ecbatana could get word of what was going on in his empire. And then he could send his army on this road. And so this was a revolution in communication. The king of Persia, after Darius, knew more about what was going on in his empire than any king ever before. And he had a massive empire, and he still knew more about his empire, what was going on, who was doing what the gossip was, than any king before him. That military movement also allowed for his army to move quickly. We see this kind of command and control. The king of Persia could send out commands and get stuff done. He could also control stuff. He could crush revolts. The Ionian revolt, the Greek revolt in 500 BC is a perfect example of this. The Greeks revolted and thought they had about 5 years before Darius and his army, his giant army, would show up. In fact, the Ionians, who are west of Sardis, thought they were so at the end of the world that Darius might not even worry about them, might not even care, might let them go, because they were so far away. They're 2,000 miles away. Cyrus shows. Now remember, they thought they had 5 years. The revolt was going to happen. That word would have to get all the way down to Persepolis. Darius would be like, "Wait, what's going on? Yo, you, trusted Secretary of State, you go up to Sardis, find out what's going on. Is there really a revolt? Because if I have to get an army together, this is going to be expensive. You go up there. That guy has to go all the way up, so that's going to be 6 months, maybe a year to get up to Lydia. Then he's got to hang out for 3 months, see what's going on. He's got to write a couple letters. He's got to come back. The army then has to be put together. That's going to take 6 months. And boom, 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 boom. And suddenly you're talking about 5 years. And so maybe the Greeks win because Darius says, you know what? They're poor Greeks living on the edge of the world. They're hillbillies. They're not worth a 5-year investment of my time. Egypt's one thing. India's one thing. Babylon, of course we have to conquer Babylon. But the Greeks, they have nice mosaics. So the Ionians thought they had 5 years. Darius shows up within a year. Shows up with an army of 250,000. His hand on his hips going, "What are you kids doing here? Who started this? Because I'm finishing it." That's what the roads allowed him to do. His information came back to him travel 2,000 miles quickly. He was able to assemble an army and use those roads to march up to the end of the world as far as his maps were concerned. Quickly. Faster than any king had ever moved before. These were not used for trade. Trade continues on the rivers. The Nile, the Euphrates, the Tigris. So ordinary people do not benefit from these roads. It is strictly the internet of the 1970s. It is only the government benefits from this. The Romans will figure out if we build the roads wide enough and heavy enough and allow carts on them, not only will the army be able to move, but people will be able to move. And people move means money. But remember, Darius owns 3-4 richest places on earth. He owns Lydia, which is the place that invented coins. He owns Egypt, which has the Nile. He owns Babylon, the richest trade city in the world. And he'll conquer India, which nobody knew was as rich as it was. And it turns out to be super rich. So did he really care about trade all that much? He already has money. He doesn't need to make more money. And so what is created by Cyrus, Cambyses, and Darius is an empire some 2 million square miles, some 25 million people, 25% of the world's population. It is the largest, richest empire in history up to this point. What maintained this empire? The Persian army. And in our next episode, we will talk about the Persian army. Thank you very much. See you soon.